What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Jacked Ramsays. I'm your host, Danny Marang, joined as always by Brandon Sprague. And today we have special guest, Caitlin Cooper of Indy Cornrows. We've had her, obviously, on the old version of the Blazers Edge podcast. She will make you smarter about watching basketball. So, Caitlin, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. I know you hate it when I hype you up, but I'm going to gas you up every single damn time.
Yeah, I just like to have a lower bar and then I can surprise people instead of having the bar set here and then people are like, oh, geez, why did he invite her on?
No.
Just to give you an idea, Caitlin, like this dude will never concede an argument. He will try to out basketball everybody. And you are the only human being I know where he's been like, yeah, I don't know anything compared to her. She's going to dominate us and teach us the X's and O's and what's going on the court.
Well, I knew some hype had to have been going on because the other night I had like 20 people from Portland following me on Twitter. And I was like, what is going on? Like, why is Portland all of a sudden liking my tweets?
Well, it's because, number one, you're great at your job. Number two, you have our gentle son, Baby Sabonis, who we'll see tonight. Fun story. Before COVID, it was right before COVID shut down the NBA. The Pacers were here in Portland, and I walked out of the media room, and I turned the corner. And for those that don't know, when you walk out of the media room, that is the tunnel that the players go through. I was looking over my shoulder and not paying attention, and I ran square into the chest of Baby Sabonis, and I bounced off of him like a child. That is one of the thickest, strongest, most tree-rooted human beings I have ever seen in my entire life. And for anybody who's never met me, I am 5'11", 275, and I was terrified. He is a truck of a man. I can only imagine what it's like to catch a screen from him. And that's kind of where I want to go right now. Everybody always wants to talk about Baby Sabonis, but I think the biggest surprise, at least for me, and then I want to let you kind of steer here from here, Myles Turner seems to have found something so far. Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in that game against the Knicks and in the game against the Wizards, he's been somewhat up and down. He's been out of the fourth quarter in about 4 games where Rick Carlisle hasn't played him and is downsized instead. But that game against the Knicks, I will flat out say, like, if you look at the box score, it was funny when I looked at it afterwards. I'm like, okay, Torrey Craig took more shots than Sabonis. And like the Knicks made more free throws than the Pacers even attempted. And it's like, if you look at that, you're like, there's no way that the Pacers are going to win this game. Duarte, Brogdon, and Justin combined to be like 2 of 15 from 3. And the way that Tom Thibodeau defends the Pacers every time that they play is that he actually lets the 5 defend Myles, which most teams do not do. They'll have the 5 defend Sabonis, and then they have that guy just sink back in the lane. And if Myles beats him from 3, then he beats him from 3. That was successful last year. The other night, it was not successful. Like, Myles is 7 of 10. He's shooting the ball with a lot more confidence. Once he sees 1 or 2 go down, he'll actually keep shooting. Whereas in the past, like, he might record scratch out of some of those shots. Like, the fact that he actually took 10 threes was an accomplishment all on its own. And he took one off a dribble. He's taken some as a trailer, which I've wanted them to use Myles Turner as a trailer for like 2 years now. So that's a breath of fresh air because those shots are always there. I mean, typically NBA transition defenses, the first big back protects the paint, the second big back loads to the ball. So it's pretty easy for the big just to step into a shot really easily there and hopefully be able to stretch out the defense and have them react on later possessions. So yeah, if you look at that and his shooting, if he can keep shooting it at this clip, it really makes me question, like, will that start to open other stuff up? Because right now, most teams typically try to crowd Sabonis. Like, if you watch when they played Toronto, they sent 3 to 4 defenders at Sabonis, and then the spacing was a little bit wonky. And those 2 games where they didn't really attack it all that well. So if Myles can hit these shots and teams start to care more about the fact that he can shoot, that gives you a lot more floor balance. So I think he's a pretty big key to the season if he can continue to play like he has in 2 of the games so far.
So we're 3 minutes in and my mind's blown already. So that was an impressive start for you. Caitlin, I caught their first game. I couldn't believe they lost that Charlotte game. I caught the Miami Heat win. And then I look up because I'm an Atlanta Braves fan, so I kind of stopped paying attention to the NBA for a couple of days. But I look up and, the Pacers have lost 4 in a row. They've won 2. What happened in the losing streak? What did they change or what did you see different in the last 2 games?
Right. So, I mean, the last 2 games, they have Caris LeVert back. I mean, that's pretty big. So that last game against the Knicks was the first time since April 18th of last year that they had Brogdon, LeVert, Turner, and Sabonis on the floor at the same time. Prior to that, when they were playing Brooklyn and when they played the second game against Toronto, LeVert and Brogdon had kind of been 2 ships in the night where LeVert came back and then Brogdon was out with a hamstring, and then LeVert was also on a minutes restriction. So you're leaning more heavily on TJ McConnell and Brad Wanamaker. And for all the very good things that TJ McConnell does, teams duck under screens against him all the time, which neuters a lot of what you can do in the pick and roll or with Spain or other stuff. So, they're playing in Brooklyn, and teams have, like I said, like what Toronto did, they've taken to really swarming Sabonis this season, a couple various teams, and that's easier to do when LeVert and Brogdon aren't on the floor at the same time. So that was just creating a lot of challenges. And then I felt like there were some things they could have done with counters and other stuff that they really didn't hit. But now that everybody's back on the floor, they have more guys who can get downhill and also be playmakers going downhill when Brogdon and LeVert are playing at the same time. They had good scoring balance. I mean, I think all 5 starters were in double figures against San Antonio. They were pretty close to that the other night. And their defense just looks better. I mean, early going, like when Myles had the 40-point game against Washington, they were using predominantly drop coverage, and their point of attack defense wasn't really holding up. And now, like the Blazers, they're hedging a lot, particularly with Sabonis, or in the lineups that Sabonis plays with Goga. You'll see him jump out above the level of the screens quite a bit to try to mitigate some of what they lose with point of attack defense. And they've been more flexible with cross matching that I bet you'll probably see tonight too.
Caitlin, this team has, I think it's the big thing obviously is injuries. But when you look at the difference between going from Nate to Bjorken to now Rick Carlisle, I know it's only been 9 games, but what are some things that pop out to you immediately as far as what they're trying to accomplish, what they can accomplish, and what maybe they will be able to accomplish as the season progresses and they get healthier?
Right. So defensively, I don't know how many people know exactly how gimmicky some of the stuff the Pacers were doing on defense last year was.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't really fit the roster. Like Nate Bjorken was very much coaching the team he wanted and not the team that he had on that end of the floor. They were coaching them like the Raptors. So they were playing shape shifting between box and 1, triangle and 2, 2-3, and then being very aggressive in their man-to-man coverage, where you would see like Sabonis pressing out on top against non-shooters. They went over on every screen, whether it was Ben Simmons, Russell Westbrook, whoever it was, and then they gave up like the highest rim frequency in the NBA. So even when you have a guy like Myles Turner, who's amazing at blocking shots, that's still a tremendous amount of volume and ask for even him to be depressing that when you're giving up that much ground space there. So Rick Carlisle's challenge obviously was just to simplify that. I mean, we knew that this team could be a good defensive team. They were under Nate McMillan. They were top 6, and Victor didn't play most of that season. That was with Jeremy Lamb playing. So you create a little bit more simplistic team. They're still playing 2-3 zone, but the roles and responsibilities make more sense. It's more streamlined. And then they're trying to figure out still somewhere they're doing on defense. But the hedging to this point has been pretty effective, I think. Some of their backside rotations could be a little bit better, but in terms of what Sabonis looked hedging a year ago to what he looks like now, that's a pretty radical difference. Offensively, it's more 5 out. I mean, Nate Bjorken played 5 out, but they do it most of the time now. The post has been de-emphasized, which I have a little bit of a love-hate with. I think sometimes they could lean on that a little bit more, and not just because I want Sabonis in there wrestling with somebody, but like he's a good enough passer that gets you threes for your better 3-point shooters when guys double. And sometimes when they go through scoring droughts, it's because they're going through I think they've won 1 third quarter this year. A lot of times, I mean, you watch that Hornets game when they gave up the 23-0 run, like they didn't take any shots in the paint. It was all turnovers and all missed threes. And, they needed to take more threes under Nate McMillan. That's not a bad thing. It's more about who's taking them sometimes. Against the Raptors when they were crowding him. Like, I don't really need Sabonis taking 7 threes in a game. That's not really something, especially when he goes 1 of 7 on them. But I would say the biggest difference is there's more randomness to Rick Carlisle's offense than there was Nate Bjorken's. His was more mechanical, and they hit more of their options. If they go all the way through a set, there'll be 5 options, and you might see in the same game that they're going to find all 5 of those. Whereas with Nate Bjorken, it was like, okay, we're just using this as masking action. We never intend to use it, and teams keyed in on that pretty quick. Like, oh, we don't need to care about that fake UCLA cut because we know you're never going to use it, and you're just going to swing it to the other side of the floor. Yeah. On this one, they hit more of their buttons. So, and I would say there's better overall flow for the most part when their guys are available than what there was a year ago.
The Sabonis thing is interesting because we watched a lot of him when he was at Gonzaga. He was really good in the paint. So I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that they're not taking more advantage of that. You also have another local product in Chris Duarte coming out of Oregon, who had a pretty nice career, short run, but a nice career. What did you think of him coming out of the draft, and what have you made of him so far?
Right. So I actually do like 0 draft coverage. I don't enjoy it. So it's kind of all brand new to me when they start playing in summer league. But I think he's a gem. He's a steal at the spot that they got him. I mean, his footwork is pretty dope. What he can do to create space. He can take sidestep threes. He can step back to his left. He's pretty good at also using like pump fakes around the rim. He's not the most explosive guy to get to the basket, but he does alter his body. And then defensively, this last game, which I suspect you'll probably see tonight, they put him on Kemba so that Brogdon isn't a great point of attack defender. His defensive positioning there isn't the best. He's not great holding up against smaller, quicker guards. So Duarte could do that, and then they could put Malcolm Brogdon on Evan Fournier, and then that way, whenever Randall and Fournier ran dribble handoffs, they could switch it because Brogdon's also really strong.
Yeah.
So that gives them a lot more flexibility with Duarte in the starting lineup. Plus, there's so much in the Rick Carlisle offense that involves movement shooters, and the Pacers don't, after losing Doug McDermott in free agency, like Chris Duarte and Justin Holiday are pretty much the main two guys who can do that. If you're going to be running, like using him as the back screen in Spain, or using like ghost screens for him to slip out, or some of the veer stuff that Rick Carlisle likes to run. He's pretty important. He's started every game so far, and that'll be interesting to watch once TJ Warren comes back, how they handle that.
Caitlin, if you're Rick Carlisle tonight, how are you tackling this Blazers team that the starting lineup has struggled? They've consistently given up the most open threes and open corner threes in the NBA by a pretty substantial margin. When you look at this, how would you attack this team kind of on both ends of the floor?
I mean, some of that will suit the Pacers pretty well because a lot of their sets are geared around what I said before, finding open threes for their shooters. Mm-hmm. So that will be somewhat degree of free money if tonight is a good shooting night for them. They have had 4 games this year where they've shot below 35%. Some of those were in the 20s. So if they can get the ball going like they did in the last game and against the Spurs, then the Blazers could be in trouble. It'll be interesting to watch both teams doing the hedging, because the one thing I noticed about Chauncey Billups' offense that I think is a little bit different than Terry Stotts, and this is just me watching the last 2 games, is they use a ton of ram screens where, it's CJ setting a screen for then Nurkic to come up. If they're going to be doing that with Sabonis, or even sometimes they do it with Myles as well, that's going to make them later to get up and be hedging against Dame, which I know Dame's been going through his struggles, but still that's giving a guy an extra step from what they want to be doing within their scheme. And then, I saw Jared Allen kind of picked him apart from the short roll. So that would be kind of fun for me to watch, because it's been a while since I've got to see Sabonis on the short roll in a game, because there's just like last year, a lot of teams ducked under Brogdon, and teams will duck under LeVert as well. So the Blazers come out and blitz, that will open up a lot of decision matrix for Sabonis that he doesn't normally get to have. So
Caitlin, what do you make of the team in general? Because like they were, for a while there, it seemed like they were in the Ben Simmons rumor mill, and I know they've since gotten out of that. But like, what do you make of the direction of the Pacers? Because we kind of talked about this, or at least mentioned before we went live, of Indiana, Portland, kind of similar feel. They're running it back, new coach. Hey, this could be different. But yet you still kind of hear talk about what they're potentially going to do with the roster. Like when you look at the direction or kind of where they're headed, what do you see when you look at Indiana?
Right. So I think the common line that I said over the offseason, and I still feel like, is I wasn't opposed to them running it back, but I'm not completely committed to it. I'm fully open to seeing what Rick Carlisle can do with all of them when they're healthy, because the one thing that is different between the Pacers and Portland is we've still yet to see Malcolm Brogdon, Caris LeVert, TJ Warren, Myles Turner, and Sabonis play even a single minute of basketball yet. I don't know what that full picture looks like, let alone under the offense and the defense changing somewhat. So there's that. I mean, I think the double big thing is going to be perpetually there until they finally make a decision on it. But like I said at the top, if Myles can continue to play in this way, that becomes a little bit less of a pressing issue, because I think that maybe there'll be more 50-50 decisions defensively between him and Sabonis if he can continue to show proof of product as a shooter and what he's doing somewhat offensively. But if it continues to be somewhat up and down, I think that most of Pacer fans, there's a lot of apathy there and ready to kind of pick a direction and what they want to do. And it didn't completely seem like from the coaching staff or the front office over the summer, like I'm not going to say they were opposed to doing it or that they didn't like the roster, but it was like, well, the double big thing will challenge Rick Carlisle to an extent. Like, I guess it's going to test his creativity. Like, that was one of the comments that was given over the summer. And you'll see at the end of games, which will be interesting tonight, like if Chauncey's going to try that 4-guard lineup again with Nurkic, that like they've been quick to downsize. I mean, like I said before, like against the Hornets, they downsized. Against the Heat, they downsized. Against the Bucks, I mean, they didn't downsize. They just played Goga over Myles. But will they do that again, or are they going to be able to find ways to stay big? Because I think your best players need to be able to play together in the most important moments of the games. So that's going to be something to monitor for the rest of the season, because if you can't do that, then I think that you do need to make a change. You need to find a player who makes that more workable.
Caitlin, I gave you a little heads up for the love it, like it, leave it. I wanted to see Justin squirm when I had him on, so I didn't give him the heads up. I didn't want to see squirm. I wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up, at least to give you a whole 10 minutes. If you're looking at this game tonight, if you're watching the Indiana Pacers, what would you love to see from them tonight?
Yeah, so I would do the love it, the shot making for the reasons that I said before. Like it, the cross matching, put Duarte on Dame, let Brogdon guard. Well, I guess Brogdon's out now, so that makes those things a little bit harder. I should have mentioned that.
Does that change things up? Just put TJ at the point of attack and just hope he can wear somebody out?
Yeah, I'm guessing that they're probably going to start McConnell. That would be my assumption because that's what they did in the games when Brogdon was out. So I guess I'll change the like it to winning the second chance points battle because the Pacers have been good at second chance points, but they're also giving up a ton. So the rebounding continues to be an up and down issue for them. The leave it, I will say, if they aren't making shots and they don't leverage their size, that will be kind of frustrating for me because the Trailblazers are a smaller team. The size is an advantage that the Pacers have. So if Myles is ducking in or Sabonis is ducking in, please throw them the ball.
Yeah.
Senor Sprague, what do you got tonight?
I'll start with my leave it. Nurkic, please leave your horrific defense against the bigs of Indiana. Please leave that. At some point, just stop. Like, can you stop just being abused by every other big in the league? Andre Drummond tore him up the other night. Last thing I want to see is Myles Turner or baby Sabonis just take complete advantage of Yusuf Nurkic. Should be really helpful for this team if they want to get a win. My like it, I'm going to like Nasir Little. I think he's going to get more than 11 minutes tonight coming off of the bench. I think he'll be a spark plug. And my love it. I'd like to just see them take advantage of Brogdon being out. They're a little thinner in Indiana tonight because of that. Take advantage of it. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to win every matchup that you have, but as Caitlin just said, TJ McConnell slipping into the starting spot. Like, if somebody's going to break out of a slump, if this team's going to start playing better or up to its capabilities, you'd like to see that start at some point, and why not tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go in between both of you here. My love it, I'm going to go ahead and take the energy. It's such a holistically stupid thing, but for the last 10 quarters, they haven't had any. They're coming out from home, first game home after a 3-game road trip where they really looked horrible, like I said, for 10 straight quarters. Coming out and competing at the point of attack defensively, routing things somewhere other than straight line drives into the corner, forcing somebody to take a pull-up mid-range jumper would be really, really nice at this point, even if that's what the Pacers want at times. I just want to see them compete at the point of attack because that just hasn't been there. I like it. I'm not steering away from this, Sprague. Give me more Anthony Simons minutes. Keep giving him just directly, intravenously into the veins. Give it to me all the time. Good Lord, my dog's making very strange sounds, and hopefully it didn't come through the mic because that sounded like somebody kicked something.
It sounded weird.
I think a dog knocked over a water bottle with just a little bit of air left in it still. My leave it is I'm going to follow on you, Sprague. Nurk's got to figure this out. He's gotten absolutely hammered, whether it's been in the short roll, whether it's been straight up in post-ups, having to stretch out and cover somebody. He has just gotten abused in every way, shape, matter, or form. His ability to hold on the ball. The article we had from Jason Quick a couple days back talked about how Chauncey Billups has been hard on him as far as needing him to kind of keep it going. He kept talking about how he was tired. And it was like, you just said you were in the good shape, great shape. How are you tired when you're playing less minutes than you ever played in Portland? So being able to figure out whatever that balance is, and that was some kind of question coming into the season. If they're going to play more aggressively at the point of attack and bring their bigs up out of the paint, bring the 7-foot 300-pounder out, how long could he hold up for? And it doesn't look like it's been great so far. So I'd like to find that point where he can be successful in that regard.
Caitlin, I have a quick question for you.
Go,
just out of curiosity, because you had said apathy, and I think I don't know what the percentage would be, but I think there's some of that here in Portland because we've run this back now for 7 years.
just some.
Just a little. What do you hear the most? Like, whether it's Twitter, whether it's friends, whether it's people in the media, like when they talk about the Pacers and what moves they could make or they should make, like, where do fans lean on what they would like to see changed with this team?
Oh, it's very polarizing. Half the fan, like I actually posed this to somebody the other day and said, do you think any of the starters have an above 50% approval rating? And somebody said, well, TJ Warren might. Like there was some mad, like before they extended Brogdon, there was about a month over the summer where people are like, oh, they need to trade him for Lonzo. The stuff between the bigs with Turner and Sabonis is forever polarizing, which kind of speaks to it right there. Like if it was working well, why would it be polarizing?
Yeah.
Like, and they even said that. Like, I'm pretty sure Rick Carlisle had a quote where he even said recently, like, that's a very polarizing question in these parts for some reason, and I don't really get that. I'm like, well, it wouldn't be if it was working. But yeah, I think that it goes back to moving either Turner or Sabonis is the main one that people bring up. But I expect that if you were to ask me what's the most likely one, probably Jeremy Lamb. That's not very exciting, but when TJ Warren comes back, and you already have Duarte, I'm not really sure where Jeremy's minutes are going to come from. So
that's like us trading Rocco. It's like, here's our move. We traded Robert Covington. There you go. I'm surprised Sabonis doesn't have over a 50% approval rating. Like people in Portland, and maybe it's because of the name only, but like when I watch him, I really like him. I'm surprised to hear you say that.
Well, last year there was a prevalent narrative that all he does is clog the lane, and which I totally disagree with because they run 5 out with him up top just like they are now. Nate Bjorken did that, but also the Pacers were the #1 team in rim frequency. If he was clogging the lane nonstop, you wouldn't be getting to the rim that often. And also he's a very good screener, which helps other people get to the rim. But yeah, I think some of it goes to they also, like, in his solo minutes, people are like, well, he doesn't protect the rim like Myles does, which is true. Like he isn't the quality of rim protector that Myles Turner is, but like they were also running a scheme that made no sense for Sabonis last year. And now they're trying to keep more of that action away from the perimeter. Their rim frequency isn't near as high. And his, if you look at NBA.com, his contest rate at the rim has been better. Overall, I think his defense overall has been better. I think he's a very fun player to watch. I enjoy watching his playmaking. I like bigs who can pass and that can make those types of reads and process stuff that quickly. He does a lot of stuff too that I just don't think readily pops for everyone. Like I will write an entire article about subtle screen setting techniques. I don't think other people think that's particularly exciting.
It's wonderful. Don't you dare stop doing it. I love it.
But yeah, so.
Caitlin, you said you've gotten a chance to catch Portland a little bit. What has been your, 30,000 foot view on Portland so far? Mostly running back the same roster, at least as far as the key players in the starting lineup. When you're looking at them, what is it that you see that makes sense, doesn't make sense, or what doesn't add up to you, or what does add up to you?
Well, and also real quick, can I add to that, Danny?
Yeah, go ahead.
Caitlin, were you surprised they decided to basically run it back?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, I thought that obviously the Sixers are in control on what they want for Ben Simmons, but I thought there was going to be more traction there. But at this point, like from what I've seen from Anthony, at some point it kind of feels like, are you going to decide to cash in the CJ chip and just put Anthony in that spot? Like he seems like he's shown quite a bit of growth. His wiggle and what he's doing around screens, his pull-up shooting. I mean, he even had a really nice like one-handed pickup whip pass to the opposite corner. I was like, oh, I didn't know he had that. So there's that. But like I did notice in the Cleveland game, and maybe you guys will tell me this is completely wrong, but the dynamic between some of the starters feels very weird to me at times. Like there was one particular possession where Nurkic was like very vociferously yelling for Norm to get out of the corner because he wanted to run empty side pick and roll with CJ, which that motioning indicates to me he doesn't want the tagger there. He wants that to be a shot for him. And then CJ just completely has blinders on, isn't even looking at him, and is taking a shot. And obviously his assist to turnover ratio is quite different from last year. I mean, I'm never going to say he was like a top tier playmaker, but it seemed like he was passing the ball a little bit more than in the 2 most recent games that I've watched. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, not that they aren't getting along, but it just kind of seems like there's something a little bit off there just from my outsider's perspective. And then like their bench unit was pretty good in the minutes that I saw with Larry Nance and Cody Zeller and Anthony with Dame. Whenever he runs with the bench.
Danny, give her the numbers. Give her the numbers.
Yeah, the all bench lineup of Simons, Nasir Little, Larry Nance, and Cody Zeller with Dame. They're a plus 40 in about 50 possessions. Yeah. So it's granted there's some noise there in opponent 3-point shooting, but pretty much all of their best lineups feature the bench plus somebody. Well, I should say the bench plus somebody not named CJ McCollum. All of the on-off numbers, CJ's numbers are a train wreck right now. And again, there's noise there from opponent 3-point shooting that is going to disturb that a little bit. But it's been very weird. And one of the things you highlighted there, the CJ Nurk side pick and roll had for the first probably 5 games was probably the most effective play that the Blazers ran. It was point after point after point after point, whether it was CJ pulling up because he started the season so hot, or Nurk actually being effective in scoring. And I would imagine that's something that Nurk wants to get back to, because he, for the last 4 or 5 games now, has been pretty much abysmal as far as his effectiveness on the offensive end.
Well, he's just kind of there. Like in the last game against Cleveland, he was just kind of there. I mean, they're using him as a screener a lot, but it's not. He just kind of meanders after the action.
There's no hard dive. There's no hard action, which is why Cody Zeller has been out there. And I think it's funny as you point out that it was Norm in the corner on that particular play, because it was. And who was the one guy in that starting lineup who was actually cooking in that game? And it was Norman Powell.
Yeah.
So I'm not drawing straight lines, but there's been a lot of body language and bad vibes, particularly in that starting lineup, and you can turn that on its head with the bench unit. The bench unit is locked in. Everybody kind of patting themselves on the back, hey, you're doing good. I appreciate it.
They're hungry. They play like they're a hungry group. That's not what you get from the starting lineup right now.
So and I'm really glad to kind of hear you say that, because that's something Brandon and I have talked about a ton, is that starting lineup just doesn't – it is the bad vibes club. Nothing about it seems to track. Granted, a huge portion of that is probably due to the fact that Damian Lillard is shooting 30-25 from the field. One of the things that I will consistently say is 3-point shot making is the best potpourri you can have in the NBA. If you are knocking down a truckload of threes like the Blazers are capable of doing, they can cover up for a lot of sins. They haven't really been able to do that. Some other Ant and Norm have come in, and CJ started hot. Cove has kind of figured out the shooting a little bit the last couple games, but for the most part, there's still a lot of questions, particularly in that starting lineup between the two of them. Yeah,
and the Dame stuff's kind of interesting too, because I mean, there's possessions where I was like, he's just missing shots, and then other times, like, I mean, he had an isolation in that Cavs game, I think, against Dean Wade in like the first quarter, where he turned the corner and they switched and he couldn't get around him. Like, it just didn't look like he quite had the burst to get there. Like, I don't know if he's still dealing with an injury or what, but some of that showed against Drummond in the prior game too, where it didn't look quite as what I'm accustomed to. I'm going to clip this
for later, so I have for our tinfoil time in the post game. We're unveiling a new segment called Tinfoil Time tonight, where we go over conspiracy theories, and that is the one that I have been hanging on to, that everybody keeps telling me I'm crazy. He has not cleared a corner. They run that double drag, and it is the only way he has been able to score this season, is to get that double drag screen to where he gets a little bit of space and he can find one gear. He hasn't been able to find the next. And he's going up short. He's going up quick on the same side to try to avoid getting a shot blocked. And it's been this very, very weird thing where a guy that is as strong as him looks like he has to muscle every single thing up. And I'm not quite sure what's going on. He said he re-aggravated the ab issue the other night, and I'm like, well, did you re-aggravate it 10 days ago? Because he
did. I mean, I think we know, because Caitlin, he basically came in and everybody was saying he's fine, he's healthy, and he started off slow, and even after the first 5 games, no, he's fine, he's healthy. And I told Danny before that Cleveland game, if this keeps up, at some point we're going to get a report that, he's actually playing injured. And after Cleveland, he comes out and he's like, I re-injured my abdominal strain. It's like, you didn't just do that. You clearly have been playing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Because, I mean, it's a little bit more excusable at the end of crunch time when he has Evan Mobley. He isolated Evan Mobley and then Mobley blocked his shot. It's like, okay, Evan Mobley's a terrific athlete. Like that one makes sense. But when it's Dean Wade up at the top and he can't get that extra step to get to the window, that one raised my antenna a little bit.
That's scary hours at that point.
Do you think Dean Wade did do you think he ever had the Michael Jordan commercial moment where he called himself D Wade, and when he showed up, people were like, white guy, what the hell's going on here?
I hear people in Cleveland talk about that they need to put a D, like when you look up at the lineup stats on NBA.com and they only ever abbreviate the person's first name, and it's D Wade. Yeah, it needs to be D-E Wade.
All right, so rude. Degenerates over here in Oregon. Caitlin, I don't know how you feel about sports gambling, but I'm all about it. This spread right now is Portland 5.5-point favorites.
Oh God!
And the over/under is 222.5. Danny has this thing: if it's sub 230, he's almost always betting the over because Portland's defense kind of sucks. And I'm curious where you're going to go with those numbers.
The Pacers have been so up and down. Like, if they could play like they did against the Knicks, I think that the Pacers have a really good chance in this one for some of the stuff that I laid out. But they might be looking at the fact that in general, other than last year when they did some of the Bjorken stuff and ran box and won against Dame, they've been very bad playing in Portland for quite some time. This is the first game of their road trip. They just now know that Brogdon's out. I might lean the Blazers. I mean, it's tough for me to say that though, because I just saw how, like, no offense, but like,
no, trust me.
They
Please
looked in the last
Please
two
offend us.
games.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like, the Pacers seem to finally be hitting their stride. But anytime you have a good vibe Pacer thing, something bad happens. So maybe they'll be the Damian Lillard bust, like. They'll be busting him out of his slump tonight. I could totally see that happening. But
I wonder if this is a Rick Carlisle via Terry Stotts revenge game. You know what I mean? Like, this is Rick's way to help Terry out.
You said it was 5.5, Brandon?
5.5 point favorites. The Portland Trailblazers are 222.5 is the over under.
Give me the Pacers in the over. 5.5.
I was trying to be a nice guest.
No.
I think
don't. We
don't
don't want nice. We want honest.
No, I'm thinking, I mean, just based on them playing against the Sixers and the Cavs, and based on what I just saw from the Pacers against the Spurs and the Knicks, I think that the Pacers have a pretty good chance even without Brogdon, depending upon how well LeVert can pass out of some of the blitzing.
And are you going to take the over? Are you taking the over in the points?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, their offense has been kind of like the league as a whole. Like, they've had some very low scoring games, and then they've had games like against the Wizards where they're up in the 120, 130 range. So yeah, let's do that.
Okay. I like it.
Which way are you going, Brandon?
Oh, I'm taking those points all day. Indiana plus 5.5.
The second you said 5.5, I was like, 5 and the hook? You don't
I wanted
say.
it to get to 6. I'm like, we're gonna get too high here. And I'm also taking the over. I've seen no evidence to suggest Portland's defense is, even without Brogdon, going to be able to slow Indiana down, especially with the bigs and the way Nurkic has been playing. And I'm going to roll the dice that Indiana has
a plus shooting night
San Antonio game than maybe the Knicks game where they held the Knicks to 98 and gave up a little more against San Antonio.
The Cavs, who feature two guys who can dribble and shoot, scored 107. So, I even without Brogdon, the Pacers have a few more guys who can do more than chew and walk at the same time. So, Caitlin, thank you so very much for coming in. I appreciate it. Like I said, everybody here has been pretty much singing your glowing praises here in the comments. For all of the folks that want to follow you, where can they find you?
At C2_Cooper is my handle, and then I typically have 1 or 2 pieces at Indy Cornrows, and then once in a great while, I did have a freelance piece at 538 that I have to keep promoting because I actually really like that article about Eric Gordon. So go find that one.
I actually do have it here linked in. If you guys are watching on Blazers Edge, I have the 538 article there linked because it was great. So thank you for that. Caitlin, thank you so very much for your time. For everybody else out there, thank you for coming into the Jacked Ramsays Pregame Show. I'm Danny Marang, as always with Brandon Sprague. Like, rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching here on YouTube, go ahead and click that subscribe button. We really appreciate you helping us grow the channel. We're trying to get to 2,000. By the time we get to Thanksgiving, we are still on pace. So thank you all so very much. You can find us wherever you get podcasts. Jacked Ramsays. Search for us. We're there. Like, rate, review, subscribe, do all the things. We will catch you following the game tonight, and hopefully Brandon and I will have made some money, and the Blazers still win, maybe? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Get your tinfoil hats ready, because we got all kinds of conspiracy theories tonight. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you soon. Caitlin, thank you again. We'll talk soon. Take care. Bye.